American economic crisis. America is a superpower country in the world. Some economic figures are: GDP growth ratio is 1.6%. GDP per capita ranked 7th in the world. More than 80% GDP depends on service industry. The inflation rate is 5%. 10% to 12% population lives below the poverty line. Unemployment rate is around 15%, which is very high. The trade balance is almost zero. The government debts are around 130% of GDP. Revenue is 33% and expenses are 37% of GDP. Budget deficit is around 5% of GDP. The largest economy, United States of America, is running out of cash, and if they don't do anything about it in 2023, it could be fought a potentially devastating default which can have a massive economic effects all around the globe. United States of America was expected to default on its debt. But after a long debate, the US has now suspended its debt ceiling. Many think tanks think that a big indicator of US default is due to the dollar weakness around the world. US economy is not on a safe end because if you see the debt to GDP ratio, it is 130% of gross domestic product, and that is very high and big threat of US default. This debt to GDP ratio is highest ever in the history of America. The US has increased the debt ceiling for more than 78 times in the last 60 years. And when America will default, it will affect not only the world economy, but almost every country's economy will be affected adversely. It is very important to study the economic indicators, because when this will happen, it will shake from stock market to single commodity. I explained economic indicators in detail in my previous video. There is a need to understand what is debt ceiling. Debt ceiling means a limit defined, let's suppose $1 trillion. It means that US government can get loan maximum to this limit to run their business. Now the question is how a country can get the loan. There are three ways to get loan. The first one is a country gets loan from international organizations like IMF, World Bank and development banks. Secondly, a country could get loan from its commercial banks. This is called internal financing or loan. The third type to take loan is by issuing the securities like government bonds at a certain interest rate, suppose 5%. For example, if US need to get loan, it will issue the bonds equal to the amount of $1 trillion. Now different countries, let's say China, France, Russia, Germany, Australia, will buy these bonds at the interest rate of 5%. This means the America will pay them 5% interest annually on their investment amount. Now every year America will return 5% interest amount to the investing countries. These bonds are issued at a maturity time, let's suppose 20 years. This means the America will return back the investment of these countries after 20 years. This term, debt ceiling, was introduced by the America to keep its debts under the limit. Congress of America gives its approval of have the authority to change it. This is the safe investment for the investor countries, because by taking bonds, they take a security from respective country in a bond form. And by issuing these bonds, a country takes loan from one another. In technical term, these bonds are called instruments. The American government debts are more than 130% to GDP. This is destabilizing the American economy because the debt ceiling is increasing day by day. The loan is a biggest indicator of an economy, and when it crosses the limits, a country may default. The America debt to GDP ratio increased after COVID-19 pandemic drastically. This happens because of decrease in the tax collection. The government spendings increased due to the government relief announcements for the people. The America paid more than $450 billion in 2022 as interest payments. And now the interest payments are projected of more than $650 billion in 2023. The US debt ceiling is more than $30 trillion. In worst scenario, if United States defaults, this will not only affect the America but the whole world economy. Because everything is connected with one another. According to the experts, the credit rating of America affected because of these negative ratios. The Economist thinks that the credit rating of America will further lower within next 2 years. Because the debt to GDP ratio is too high, therefore there is a chance that the credit rating of America shall further downgrade. Remember that when credit rating decreases of any country, it presses the interest rate towards high. Resultantly, the countries give loan or buy bonds at a higher interest rate. This will cause more inflation in the country. Therefore, U.S. projected interest repayments are $200 billion plus in year 2023. And if the worst scenario, the American debt increases onward, it will reflect an increase in interest rate. For example, when America will borrow money, it will affect its credit rating. When credit rating will decrease, the higher interest rate will impact. Hypnotically, if interest rate doubles, the interest rate will be doubled from $650 billion to $1,300 billion. Let's take example of Sri Lanka when it defaulted in 2022. The commodities prices gone out of control, medicines, petrol, food items. When the Sri Lanka defaulted, the first thing that happened was interest rate of bonds gone high from 4% to 16%. Because its credit rating decreases sharply, and resultantly nobody relied to give loan due to under-rating. This could practically paralyze an economy, and not so surprisingly this has exactly happened in Sri Lanka. The second thing which happened after default in Sri Lanka was foreign investors' sellings. Because investors loses confidence on Sri Lanka economy and they materialize all their investments. Resultantly the stock market crashed down, and after that Sri Lanka went to IMF for help. Same like Sri Lanka, when the economy of America will collapse, what will happen? The government will have to cut spending, and this could lead in high prices of commodities. This could lead to increase in inflation. The government will have to lay off of federal employees, and it will affect everything. From spending on people to the even military spending. The economists predict that if US default, more than 2 million people will be unemployed. The stock market will drop down, and eventually banks could not be able to give back loan easily. This will affect people's and businesses everything. Why America can default? America can default because it is losing its position day by day in the world. For example, the dollar is losing confidence as there are currencies being used as alternative of dollar. Euro, now that China also use its own currency in foreign dealing, and this is decreasing the value of dollar. The emerging markets are pushing the dollar for a change and acquire to use the local currencies. Now if United States of America defaults, what will be its effects on world economy? The most important, there is not securities for those countries who invested in US bonds. Because when the America will default, the confidence on bond will decreases. The countries who took the US bonds have borrowed money from other countries or banks by giving US bonds as securities. Which means those countries, including the lending countries and banks, will lead towards crisis. As America will not be able to return the interest plus loan amount, and this could lead financial shortfall in other countries. The US dollar currency will devalue, which resultantly will devalue the other countries' foreign reserves that are maintained by countries for foreign trade and payments. It also affects those countries who overprinted the currencies on the dollar's reserves basis. Lastly, the US trade partners will be affected, as America is the world big consuming country in the world. So in economic crisis, the American people will consume less amount of quantity, which resultantly impact the trade of America partners countries. Therefore, as a whole, if superpower economy will be affected, it will definitely heavily affect the whole world economy. That's all from my side. If you learned something, please make sure to the like button and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you in my next video.